guys, welcome back to the Desert Spring. So today we've got a great video. We're asking the question, why are Christians such assholes sometimes? Right? So this video popped up on my channel, and it was kind of a perfect timing. And so I was like, you know what, let's go ahead and do this. I haven't done a video in a while about dealing with Christians and stuff like that. And so I just wanted to bring up this video really quickly. So this is the recovering Catholic. We haven't done a video from him from a long time, or for quite some time, but why Christians think that you're dumb. It's so funny. You know, you start explaining to a Christian some stuff, and you know how everybody just starts whenever you start a discussion, there's kind of like these assumed truths that you start a discussion with as you work through things. Well, one of Christians' assumed truths is that you're completely stupid and that you're an idiot. And it's so funny because all they end up trying to do is just to shackle you to the same chains that they're shackled to you to, and then smile and say, doesn't it feel so great? It's kind of crazy. The Recovering Catholic, it's a channel that I had seen a few times and was kind of instrumental in me walking away from Christianity and stuff like that. This guy was raised Catholic, so regardless of that, you know, in general, I mean, it's just, you can't win with them, and so it's like, why even try? You know, you'll see me down in the comments sometimes kind of going back and forth with these people to try to get the video some more engagement. But then I just recently found out that the YouTube changed their thing. So if you go back and forth with these people and it's just two people going back and forth, they don't send the video out anymore like they used to. They used to, and so going back and forth was actually kind of a positive thing for the channel in general. But now it's just kind of whatever. And so we're going to watch this video as well as I kind of share some of my experiences and stuff like that.
You are far smarter than they say you are. Hey guys, it's John sitting out here on the back deck.
His little his opening thing always gets me. Really quick, before I get too far into this video, just wanted to let you guys know that down in the comments or down in the description, you can see a link to my website. If you're curious about the path that I took out of Christianity, you can go there. If I also have some stuff regarding what do I have all on there? I have a bunch of videos that I do not post to YouTube. So a lot of people were asking me for, you know, some of the more science type of videos, as well as some of the more kind of like meditation and practice kind of videos to help when you're walking away from Christianity. And I would post them here on YouTube, but the problem is that when I would do that, YouTube would start assuming that I was trying to reach a different audience than just supporting the existing audience that I have. And so then they started taking away the impressions that they would send my video out to in an attempt to try to find somebody else. And so multiple times I've gotten kind of negatively hurt by putting up content like the meditation content and all that kind of stuff by YouTube, because those videos are only for very, very niche, specific people inside of my audience, whereas YouTube, when they see that only a couple of people out of my audience are interacting with those videos, it assumes, oh, well, we've got the wrong audience. So then it just stops sending my videos out to anybody, and then it goes back to, you know, only sending 10 views, 5 views, 7 views on a video, and it gets a bit frustrating. So anyways, so for that reason, I have my website down below, and you can interact with it. I've got a few different programs. One that I haven't put any videos to yet, but I'm building an emotional regulation series, which is kind of dealing with the emotions and getting to the root causes of the problems, and how you can basically experience a significantly better transformation and a healthier transformation when you're walking away from Christianity. And as well as some of the meditations and exercises and some of that kind of stuff. So you can go down into the description. You'll see the website link there, and you can click that and go over there. Also, Wednesday, 8 p.m. Central, I do a live every single week. The purpose of it is just to support people as they walk away from Christianity. So if or really just grief in general. So if you're going through something, or you just need some support, or maybe you just have this issue, you're trying to walk away from Christianity, you're experiencing a lot of fear, or you just have something tough that you're going through in life and nobody to talk to, I'm going to be available Wednesday, 8 p.m. Central here on YouTube. And so you'll just go and you'll click on the live and you'll see the phone number there, and you can just call in and have a conversation with me. I don't record any of those things, and I don't post any of those things. The purpose of that is it's supposed to be a relatively private, kind of session, a little gift for people, just so that, you can still interact, me ask any questions, all that kind of stuff. And so that's here on YouTube, 8 p.m. Central. So I just wanted to make sure that those two things. Also, if you could, like and subscribe. Oh, I'd like that to be a little higher. If you could like and subscribe, or just interact with this video in any way, whether it's leaving a comment, leaving a couple of comments, responding to other people's comments, all that kind of stuff. YouTube likes to see the comment section kind of going off, and likes and whatever. They just want to see a bunch of different people engaging with the video. So if you could do me that favor, that'll help kind of spread the word out a little bit more about what we do here and about supporting people as they walk away from the craziness that is Christianity. So let's get back to the video here.
With a glass of lemonade. I hope you guys are having a great day wherever you are. I wanted to talk to you about your intelligence. Christianity tells you that the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. But then they also tell you that God is love, and so perfect love drives out fear. And so the concept of that being wisdom is kind of a contradiction to what they teach in their own Bible. But the reason I wanted to make this video is because today was one of those days where I got multiple attacks from Christians, and there wasn't an overwhelming theme that was happening, an overlying theme that's happening in most of them today. And it was that I was dumb, and that, I'm an idiot, and that, you don't know what you're talking about. And
why are they so mean, man? I don't understand why they're so mean. Their favorite thing to do is to call people stupid idiot. And it's funny, I see them. So whenever that, it's a love language for them, by the way, just to put that out there, that's how they show you that they care about you, is that they tell you that you're destined to burn in hell and that you're stupid. That's just kind of their love language, I guess. Whenever the church that I had supported, whenever they got flooded, and I was allowing them to take some of the old equipment that I had in my previous business, I was allowing them to take it so that they can take care of the flooding in their church, right? It doesn't matter that I don't agree with what they do. I'm not a Christian anymore, would never want to walk down that path. Doesn't change the fact that when, people are going through a crisis, I'm happy to be there to support them and love them anyway. And so, yeah. So while they were at my house kind of loading up this equipment for the flood that had happened in their sanctuary, the entire time they were calling each other stupid. They were calling each other idiots. They were calling each other dumb. And I'm just like, you guys are so fucking mean to each other, man. Like, if that's Christianity, I want nothing to do with it, Like, you would assume that, like, everybody's kind and caring and all that kind of stuff. But no, you get into some of these churches and they're just like insult after insult after insult after insult. It's kind of crazy. Now, I'm in the South, so in general, Southern people tend to insult as jokes. And so if you're not familiar with that, or if you've never experienced that, it could be a regional thing. But I know Southern humor is a lot of cutting humor in general, which isn't any good. But and so I've dropped that as part of my walk, my spiritual walk. But it's interesting to see that, they're just mean, a mean group of people. So whatever, it is what it is. Everybody's got their own quirks, I guess.
I want to let you know that if you're finding your own truth, which is all I do on my channels, I talk my own truth, They're only offended because my truth doesn't match theirs, and theirs has to be the only way for their truth to work. The interesting thing is wisdom. Let's talk about wisdom. The wisest people in the world don't limit themselves to one track, because knowledge itself is based upon what you choose to believe. So I believe in the theology of Christianity. Everything else and anybody else has got to be an idiot or dumb or not knowledgeable. They will attack my views of the Bible, not knowing that I've read the Bible probably more times than they have, and that I have also studied spirituality broadly since 1999, and was searching spirituality prior to that from the time I was 19 years old. So I've been studying this stuff for a very long time. I'm very knowledgeable in Christianity. I'm very knowledgeable in
And they just don't give a shit, man. They're, it does not matter. You're talking to this person who's only been a Christian for like 3 to 4 years, and you're just like, dude, personally, I've been a Christian for 25 years before I walked away from it. And him, I'm sure he spent decades as a Christian before he walked away from it. And the place where I go, where we all meet every Sunday to just kind of enjoy each other's company, most of them are Catholic or Protestant of some sort, Baptist, Pentecostal, something like that. And they've all spent decades inside of Christianity, come to find a different truth for themselves, and walked away from Christianity, And so whenever I do see these people who are like overzealous and things like that, it's just, give it time, But it's so funny to see that the people who have really just, who have their own, have their own kind of walk and do their own thing. Christians will absolutely join hands to shit on that person, but in the same token, they'll draw their swords and slash at each other because nobody has the right denomination. Church of Christ says everybody else is going to hell. Baptist says these people are going to hell. Catholics are saying these people are going to hell. And so it's just like, when you're actually inside of Christianity, it is nothing but just a shit show of, did I pick the right religion? And it's so stupid. And so whenever you hear a person, you hear the stupid Bible arguments, you hear all the crap, it's just like, okay, dude, kind of like whatever. But it's so funny to see that they just want you to validate them in some sort of way. It's almost like, I have a person in the comments who always pops up in the comments, and I don't mind it because, he's a person who's commenting, and he goes back and forth with me a little bit, which helps out the video, which is the only reason why I entertain the guy. If you've got a fly that keeps flying around your face, you might as well put the fly to work, right? And so it's funny because, I had a back and forth with him, and he, I guess in some sort of way, he thought he was going to corner me. He was just like, oh, if Jesus and God revealed himself to you, came into your room and showed that they indeed were the right ones or whatever, would you bow your knee and would you become Christian? And I'm like, yeah, if that was the experience, but you forget who walked me out of Christianity, right? So I've had basically the exact same experiences, but in the opposite direction. And I asked him earlier, I'd asked him a similar question of, if Jesus and God came to you and asked you to walk away from Christianity, would you? And he completely ignored the question, didn't answer it, didn't want to even think about it, right? And so it's that double standard. It's the double standard stupidity that they always bring up, and it's important to separate the ideology from the person, obviously, all the time. You have to understand that people suffer from beliefs. They suffer from their own beliefs, right? You have a person who lives on top of the world, and they're suffering because they don't feel like they have enough, or you have a person who has has kind of this crappy mentality, and you can see right through their crappy mentality how their mentality is creating their life, right? Because that's one of the things. Your beliefs create your experience in life. And so one of the things with Christians is that their belief is that they are suffering and that they are persecuted. And so they'll go out and they'll pick fights with people. They'll start fights with people. And then whenever they get hurt based off of something that somebody says, because they're the ones who instigated the fight or initiated the fight, they'll go back and kind of wear it as a chink of armor of like, no, I'm being persecuted for Christ. I'm suffering for Christ. And it's kind of ridiculous. Let me know what you guys think in the comments.
Many different religions and ideologies. And what's so interesting is when someone says that you're dumb because you don't believe the same thing they do, it's not because your knowledge is lacking. It's because their knowledge is limited. Their knowledge is only limited to what they've been told in the church. Because, like I said, most of them have not read the Bible. Most of them only follow what they're told the Bible says. And that is very much edited and translated to mean what they want it to mean. And what's really interesting is the fact that when someone's calling you dumb, that is what's known as slander. They're slandering you because they're saying you're less than or you're not as wise or you don't know anything. This is called slander. Socrates said when the debate is lost, slander becomes the tool of the loser. What happens is when you say something that shakes their core, that challenges their belief system, they want to say you're dumb because they have to slander because they can't say anything else. Because what you're saying is wise, what you're saying is wisdom. And when someone tells you that God is love and I believe in a loving God, and they tell you, or you say, I don't believe in the end times, and they come back and say, we're in the end times and you're wrong, right? That's because they've chosen the theology of some church, some religion, or some guru, some teacher. And what that does is that limits them into that one little band of knowledge. They know that bit of knowledge pretty well, but they haven't seen the broader picture. They haven't seen the bigger and more beautiful God. When you look at somebody like the Dalai Lama who says, my religion is simple, my religion is kindness, Christians get up in arms about that because you can't just be kindness. You have to believe that Jesus is your savior, right? When a Muslim says, when the Prophet Muhammad says, he who knows not kindness has no faith, the first thing they do is they berate you for bringing up Muhammad because there is a preponderance of Islamophobia in Christianity.
Hard Islamophobia.
What's so interesting about it is they are limited to this idea of only what the church allows them to think. And so their knowledge is very, very limited to that very narrow path. Remember, 70% of the world are not Christian. They are only in that one small band of knowledge, and they'll argue, yell, holler, and scream. I've had two people in the past day tell me to get off of YouTube. Like they have the power to tell me to get off of YouTube. They don't have any power over me like that. The fact that they think that they are the ones in charge is the issue, because that's where the slander comes from. They start calling you names. They start trying to knock you down. Understand that the concept or the idea of questioning your beliefs and finding what rings true to you is pure wisdom itself. And when you start looking at others and you start finding the commonalities, you start seeing a bigger and more beautiful God. God is too big, too beautiful to be encompassed by any one school of thought or religion. And
so I forgot to mention this guy. This guy is not an atheist. I want to say he's just kind of more of a spiritual person. Everybody takes a different path outside of Christianity, right? That's kind of what this channel is about. But his path outside of Christianity was basically toward, just kind of doing his own thing, believing in his own way. And it was very similar to my path. One of the things that you realize in my path is that the way that the Bible depicts God is completely false. And Christians hate to hear that. They don't want to hear that. And the stupidest part about it is that the only evidence that they have to show that that's not the truth is to use the same damn book. It's kind of stupid that, whenever they're arguing for the Bible and stuff like that. Now, don't get me wrong. Sure, the Bible is a historical text, but to say that it's 100% perfect, it's completely blind to facts. It is completely blind to facts. And so a lot of people, especially a lot of people that I'm typically around on a day-to-day basis, as far as like where I go to connect and get my community, because ultimately when you leave Christianity, that's what you have to replace is your sense of community, right? And so whenever I started finding kind of spiritual centers that worked for me and stuff like that, didn't agree with everything, and then the place that I found, I still don't agree with everything, but it's close enough to where I can have community and still be still love people and be loved and all that kind of stuff. But it's so crazy. It's so crazy that they have to have this idea that God wants to punish people because they can't fathom the idea that sin goes unpunished, right? Somebody has to die. Somebody has to burn in hell. Somebody has to spill their blood. And it's just such an archaic way of thinking. The Bible's 2,000 years old. Is that right? No, that's not it. Actually, yeah, I think roughly that's about right. The Bible's around 2,000 years old. I mean, we're talking about primitive man here. Of course, they want bloodshed. We're talking about Roman Empire, where the pastime was killing people. And so this idea that it's like, no, people have to be punished. People have to die. People have. What are you saying, that God is going to allow Hitler to go to heaven? Yeah, because if Hitler says, Jesus Christ saved me in the moments before he goes to heaven, then technically, yes, your completely just God is going to send Hitler to heaven. We bring up the rapist and the victim all the time. The rapist utters, God forgive me, before he dies. He's the one who gets to go to heaven while the victim is burning in hell. That's just? That's justice? No, that's stupidity, right? But somebody wants to say, oh, well, no, the rapist needs consequences and all this kind of stuff. Well, of course they need consequences. That's why there's a justice system here on the planet, right? But just because you make a mistake here on planet Earth doesn't mean that you have to suffer for it for the rest of eternity, right? It's really just a crazy, it's such a crazy thought system, but people get sucked into it. They get sucked into it, and people say all the time, I've been revealed by God. So is everybody else, Oh, I know, my sister, whenever I was chatting with my sister, she told me, she was like, yeah, I know in my heart and in my soul that this is right. And I'm like, well, your heart's deceitful and desperately wicked. Who can know it? So how do you know that you're right? How do you know that you picked the right one? Oh, because God revealed to me. How do you know it was God and Jesus? Because he said that Satan appears as false light. How do you know that you're not following Satan from your being Baptist to being Pentecostal? I mean, it's so stupid, but they're like marathon runners. They just run in circles with these arguments. And for the most part, down in the comment section, I was entertaining it because it helped out the video. Do I care for it? Absolutely not. I think it's kind of a pointless waste of time. But they are, they are that mean. They are that shrewd. They just don't give a shit. It's kind of crazy. Now, once again, this is separating the actual human being from the religion, because the religion teaches them to be this way, teaches them to act this way, teaches them that they need to do that this is right and all this kind of crap. And it's kind of stupid to see. It's kind of stupid to see, but it is, inevitably it is what it is. You can love the person just like the Bible says, love the sin but not the sinner. You can kind of love the person behind the person who's standing there screaming at your face that you're a stupid idiot because you don't believe in the same control structures and in the same, imprisonment that they believe in. So
And most of the religions, specifically Christianity, has gone down to the path of we are the only way, and that has caused more wars in this world, that has caused more destruction in this world, to say that everybody else is wrong. The rest, 70% of the world is wrong, and you have to believe as we did. So understand that when someone says you're dumb, wear it as a badge of honor like I do, because they're right. I'm dumb in that I know what they know, but I know more. Because I actually have gone out beyond and found a larger God that I have a direct relationship with. Christians only have a direct relationship with the doctrines of the church. They don't have a direct relationship with God. And when you come to that place of understanding that, and one of the reasons they don't have a direct relationship with God is because the church tells you have to go to Jesus, which is a middleman, or the priest, which is a middleman. They never tell you to talk directly to God. They never tell you to actually live into that perspective. They say you have to accept Jesus as your Savior. And that in itself limits your perspective or your knowledge down to what the church says he said, because everything in the Bible is hearsay. Somebody said he said it. And what's really interesting is when they did the red letter words.
Oh man, don't even get me started on this. The entire thing is a bunch of hearsay. The entire book of the whole Bible is fucking hearsay. So, Genesis, I always talk about this because Genesis is the stupidest book in the entire Bible. It's written by Moses, or attributed to be written by Moses, a man who lived 3,000 years after, or 3,000 to 4,000 years after all of the events had happened, right? So you've got the Garden of Eden, you've got the flood, you've got God himself, and it's just, Moses knew exactly what God spoke and said whenever he was creating the planet, really. Moses knew exactly word for word the conversations that happened between Adam and God, and Adam and Eve and the snake, and Cain and Abel and God, and Cain and God, and when Cain got kicked out. Like, he knew every single conversation that happened for the past 3,000 years, really. And so what they say is, well, it's a divine revelation from God. It's a divine revelation from God. Why don't you believe that? I don't have a problem with a divine revelation from God. The problem is that there's hundreds of thousands of people who claim to have divine revelations from God. There's people who've written books who, and I share those books on the channel all the time, who say, this is divinely revealed to me. Jesus spoke these words to me. And when you read the texts, they paint a completely different picture of what this primitive book, the Bible, paints. It paints God as this person who can't even handle the most basic of human emotions. Fear, anger, greed, all this kind of stuff. The most basic of human emotions, the God of the universe can't even handle. And that's so stupid. And so, the only thing I would say is that if you're going to take that book serious, then you should take other books that were supposedly, divine revelations of God. But they don't do that because they don't want to do that, right? You ask them about that, they ignore that because they always come back to, well, the Bible is no. Okay, and so this is more of a support video for you because I know that Christians are out there being assholes to you. I know they're being mean and they're just running around and wearing you out. And if you're experiencing that, from the bottom of my heart, I'm sorry that you're experiencing that. And if you just want some support, if you want some help, Wednesdays, 8 p.m., you can always call in. And I'm more than happy to support you and kind of give you a listening ear while you work through some of the stuff. And we can have a conversation about that. But it is so crazy. And that's 8 p.m. Central, by the way, Central Time. It's always crazy to just, realize that you have to accept that they are so lost and indoctrinated into their system that any conversation with them is inherently pointless, right? Because they're not seeing themselves. They're only going to see their side of things. And we know that. We've all interacted people with that, right? The people who just, it's impossible for them to see themselves. And so what do? You can sit there and you can argue and go back and forth. Now, if there's a benefit to it, then, have fun. Just, don't be mean. But, if there's no benefit to it, you don't need to sit in it. You don't have to accept it. You can walk away. And if it's your family member, I've had family members before try to sit me down for a Bible study. You just walk away and say, no, I'm perfectly fine. I don't need to be here. I'm a damn adult. And if you're not an adult, then of course, you just kind of have to deal with some of the things that you have to deal with, because whenever I was growing up, you just kind of have to deal with it until you become 18 and you're an adult. And then, and then you have the whole power struggle, going on with your parents and stuff like that.
They have these things like, well, he battled the devil in the wilderness for 40 days. Who said?
My thing about that is, who the fuck was there to write down the conversation between Jesus and the devil? Everybody, that's my favorite thing when they bring that. Well, he was in the wilderness for 40 days, and Jesus never wrote down a damn thing. So what? We're just going based off of decades of hearsay of, oh, this is what I heard, this is what I heard. It's just like, oh my God.
Who said? Why is that in red letters? Because the reality
so much of the Bible should not be in red letters. Even in Corinthians, there's parts where Paul is supposedly talking to Jesus, and it's like, none of that stuff should be in red letters. The book of Revelation, technically speaking, should not be in red letters because it's a dream. It's not actually Jesus speaking. It's just a dream.
But it's nobody knows who actually said that. And there was nobody else out there to record it, and Jesus didn't write anything down that we know of. So it comes down to understanding that the red letters are themselves are chosen by man and chosen by the church itself for what you must believe. Greater works than I have done, you will do. That does not mean that you have to be following him. He who knows not kindness has no faith, Muhammad says, right? Whatsoever you do to the least of my brothers, that you do unto me. That's Jesus. It's the same thing. It's the same concept.
Yeah, you hear that. You hear that a lot in Christianity. Jesus had this kind of an understanding that we, why? Tell me why. Ain't nothing but a... No, I'm just kidding. Tell me why. Why would Jesus say, Peter, do you love me? Feed my sheep, all that kind of stuff. Then why would he say, that's not the thing. I was thinking about the other thing. When I was naked, you didn't clothe me. When I was hungry, you didn't feed me. When I was thirsty, you didn't give me to drink. And then Peter goes, Lord, Lord, when were you hungry? When were you thirsty? When were you naked? And, and we didn't clothe you. When? And he says, if you didn't do it to the least of these, then you didn't do it to me. Okay, so let me ask you this. Let's get all philosophical here because, supposedly Jesus is God. And Jesus and God in the Old Testament, which two separate things, first of all. But the God of the Old Testament kills everything that he doesn't like. Or when he's bored, he just runs around and kills it, right? Like Job's family. He got bored and he was just like, hey, Satan, go kill all of Job's family. I've got nothing else to do. I'll take on your wager. Go kill Job's family. I want to watch, like a disgusting little cuck in the corner, right? And all of that happens, and it's, whatever with that. But Jesus, why would Jesus say, if you didn't do it for them, you didn't do it for me? Not once in the Old Testament do we see, and feel free to tell me if I'm wrong, but I highly doubt it here. Of course, it's been 7 to 10 years since I've done Christianity seriously, so I might be forgetting some stories that happens. But where in the Bible does God say, the Old Testament God say, if you don't do that for the least of these people, then you haven't done it for me? Where does God in the Old Testament display that kind of behavior? Because God in the Old Testament just runs around killing everybody. God in the Old Testament runs around telling everybody how much better he is than them, right? I mean, look at Job. He runs around, authorizes the killing of Job's entire family, authorized the killing of all the animals, authorizes the killing of everybody on the planet, authorizes the killing of Jericho, of Sodom and Gomorrah, authorizes the killing, actually directly responsible for everybody on the planet. So God has got hundreds of thousands of souls on his conscience, right? But where in the Old Testament does God display that if you don't take care of the least of these people, you're not taking care of me? We see that in Jesus, which is this all of a sudden Old Testament God has gone to therapy kind of person. It's just so, it doesn't make sense, but they refuse to see it. And then they want to call you a dumbass for not seeing it. And they want to be mean for not seeing it. And it's just, you have to understand that you're like arguing with almost like with a fifth grader. You know, it's like you're arguing with a child, and no matter what you say, no matter what reason you bring, they're going to completely ignore it. You just have to accept that that's who they are as a human being. That's how they are as a human being, and just move on peacefully with your life. Don't hold anything against them, and just move on to something else that you want to do, right?
God is too big and too beautiful because God is love itself. But the name calling and the vitriol and telling you you're stupid and telling you you're an idiot and a blasphemer and a heretic and deluded by the devil.
They love that.
That's the slander. They're only slandering because their actual faith doesn't hold up to scrutiny. It does not hold up to scrutiny. When someone says something factual and they argue it. There are so many people who wanted to argue with me because I mentioned the other day that the rapture is not in the Bible. It's not. And scholars know full well that it was invented in 1830 by Minister John Nelson Darby. And it's well documented that there are people who will argue it. There are people who will argue we are in the end times right now. They'll say, what about the prophet?
Oh my God, they've been arguing that we were in the end times since the 40s, actually before the 40s. You know, my dad, I remember asking my dad whenever I was a kid, because I'm like, my dad's old as shit. He's born in the 40s, 1944. And so I asked him, what was the first time that he heard the whole idea that Jesus was about to come back, be prepared because he's coming extremely soon? And he told me, he was like, I probably heard that for my first time when I was like 5 or 6 years old. So from the 1940s with World War II and all these things and wars and rumors of wars and all the bullshit, it's just, you know, they're a bunch of fear tactics. And on top of that, Jesus was wrong. You know, Jesus said there are some here who will not experience death before I return. Who's still alive? You know what I'm saying? So there's a spot where it says in the Bible that basically those who believe in the Spirit and all this kind of stuff, they could trample on snakes and serpents and not be hurt. And so there are factions of Christianity that literally worship with snakes, and they die all the time, right? So the Bible actively fails people, but they don't want to see that. And it's just like, okay, well, in that case, you just don't want to see it. You don't want to see it because it bothers you, and that's cool. So then don't look at it, right? I mean, that's what some people are. You know, I've got one of my friends from college who I went to college with. This guy, you know, we studied science together. We were both science degrees, and this guy is like a hard flat earther now. And I'm like, well, you know, it kind of makes sense because I was like doing a lot of tutoring. I was helping him out a lot. And to be frank, the only reason why he got as good of grades as he got is because he studied with me. So maybe that does make a little bit of sense. But I'm just like, bro, what the fuck?
Prophecies of the Old Testament.
And if you are a flat earther, I'm not throwing any shade at you as an individual. I don't want you to take this as an attack on your own self. No, this is not me attacking you. If you identify as the belief itself, then, you know, that's kind of on your own thing. You're not ever anything that you perceive yourself to be. So, but, you know, understand, you know, the whole flat earth thing, sure, it's just a bunch of people who, you know, and they've tested it, and their experiments have shown that, you know, oh, well, we did this drift, we did this test, we did this laser gyroscopic test, and we did this thing, and all they've ever found is that it's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong. And that's fine. If you want to believe whatever you want to believe, that's fine. You know, you're fighting an uphill battle. Just understand that.
And prophecies of Jesus in the Old Testament. Well, there are none. There's no prophecies of Jesus. His name was never mentioned once. There is prophecies of a Messiah, but the Messiah was a political leader, not a religious one to rule the people of Israel and take them out of bondage. A king. Which is why.
And Jesus never did that. Jesus never took them out of bondage, which is the reason why the Jewish people have the belief that they're still waiting on the Messiah, that that there's going to be one who takes them out of their bondage and all that kind of stuff. And it's whatever. You have to accept that they're just mean people sometimes.
Jesus was marked as being king of the Jews, not the supernatural savior of the Jews. Hey guys, I just wanted to say a quick thank you. This channel has no sponsors and is only run by support from viewers like yourself. If you would like to
show him some love,
Jesus is the only way, it would be completely against everything he taught in their Bible. He washed his disciples' feet to show that he was no better than they. He told them that they could ask mountains to move and it would move. Nothing would be impossible for them. They told them that when they pray, believe they shall receive and they shall. And he didn't say pray.
I see that all the time, whenever somebody's just like, well, Jesus accepted worship. He allowed people to call him Lord. He allowed people to wash his feet. And at the same time, Lord in and of itself is just teacher. Whenever you go back, I asked a what do you call it? He was a pastor. We had a long conversation about it, but he was a pastor that had left Christianity years ago, and we were talking about all that kind of stuff, and we were talking about the ideas like the virgin birth and calling Jesus Lord and all that kind of stuff, and he was just explaining that Jewish tradition and Jewish culture is never such that a virgin is a person who never had sex, that a virgin was simply a person who had not had a baby before and all this kind of stuff. Whether that's true or not, it doesn't really matter, because that was not kind of my way of walking away. But ultimately, where was I going with that? I'm going to put him back on until I remember where I was going with that. What did he say?
He didn't say pray. These are all things that were created by the church to create the doctrines of the church. To him, he didn't say pray. These are all things that were created by the church.
Oh, that's right. My sister was like, oh, Jesus accepts praise, and he says, and people call him Lord. Well, first of all, whenever people call him the good master, he says, don't call me good, because there's only one that's good, and it's God in heaven. It's not me. Okay. So he's already talking about his own separation from God in heaven versus himself. So he is very much creating himself to just be a man, right? And the other thing, too, was, he was accepting worship whenever Mary was washing his feet. Okay, and he washed Peter's feet, or he washed Mary's feet. So was Jesus worshiping another person there? It's just, it's a bunch of lunacy, but just kind of like the whole... some of the conspiracies is just kind of crazy.
The doctrines of the church. And the people who will call you dumb are the people who are so indoctrinated into the theologies of the church that they literally think anything outside of that doctrine is dumb, and they will attack you. So understand, the very idea of deconstructing your religion to find out what you truly believe is the proof of wisdom. You're wise, you're knowledgeable. And the more knowledgeable you become of other things outside of the doctrines and dogmas, you find a more beautiful God. You don't find the hateful, vengeful God who slanders. In the Bible, Jesus says, they will know you're my disciples by how you love. Well, if they're calling you dumb, they're not loving you. So they're not his disciples. If they're calling you an idiot, they're not dumb. I had someone today come on my channel and put a whole bunch of profanity on my channel. And I deleted his comment. Within a minute, he says, this guy just deleted my comment because I had an opposing view. I wrote back, I said, no, I deleted you because of your profanity. Bye, now you're hidden. And I hit him from the channel. These angry people are only angry because they're in a narrow band of knowledge that anything outside of is evil. And you're not evil. You can choose to be love. You can choose to live love. You can, as Jesus said, bring the kingdom of heaven to earth, because the kingdom of heaven is within you, as he said. You are the direct representation. You are here to deliver. You are the sons and daughters of God. Right? You're the children of God. He says you're the children of God. Well, I'm a male, so that means I'm a son of God if I'm a child of God. So it comes down to understanding that the people who are calling people dumb for not believing as they do, they are literally in this narrow band of understanding and in subjugation to the doctrines of the church, and they have to defend it. They also often want me to debate. And I'm going to say this again like I say it every other time. I don't debate my faith because I have faith in it. I'm completely confident in what I believe. And the only reason you would want to debate is to try to prove yourself right. You need to ask yourself, why do they need to prove themselves right? Because they're in a narrow band of knowledge. They don't accept anything else outside of it.
Yeah, the Abrahamic religions are really the only religions that I know of that, they have to convince the shit out of you. It's like the reason why I don't necessarily go and I'm not preaching an agenda here. I'm not, trying to convince people that God exists, all that kind of stuff. I don't care. I just don't care. It's not that serious, because life in and of itself is actually not that serious, especially when it comes to the spiritual side of things. Like I said, I've been led out of Christianity towards a path of kind of enlightenment teachings and all that kind of stuff. And when you truly experience all of that, what you come to find out is that at the end of your life, when you die, there's just an acceptance on the other side. How that works, I don't know. You can look at near-death experiences, and maybe it's a glimpse, or maybe it's just a bunch of craziness. But, when it comes to data, the fact that there are thousands and thousands of near-death experiences that all share identical core traits is astonishing. And it's significant data that should be taken serious. And when you hear stories about pastors, significant stories about pastors and Christians and all these people who have had near-death experiences, and they immediately walk away from their religions because they finally experienced what it's like to be on the other side, and they realize that the religion was completely wrong, you just learn that what's waiting for you on the other side is a loving experience. And so, why does it matter? Right? Why bother to fight? Why care to try to get involved? Why care to try to convert somebody to another religion? You could be spending all of that energy, all of that hatred and rage that all these people have pent up inside of them. You could be spending that toward helping people, toward feeding people, toward other positive aspects of community. But instead, they want to fight. And it's not because what it really comes down to is they just want to fight. They want that fight, and that's okay. They've got shit that they got to deal with in themselves. But I saw this video, and I may do another one here in a bit, but it was this video about this guy and his channel. All he does is he argues with other Christians and tells other Christians that they're going to hell. He's a specific kind of Christian, one specific denomination, and he just argues with people that are not in his specific denomination. He tells them how they're wrong. He lures them into arguments, and he basically craps on them and shits on them the entire time. He doesn't respect them, just, verbally, just a mean, very, very mean person. And, he posted a video how Christ changed me from being an abusive person towards being a Christian. It's like, you're not a changed person. You've just channeled your energy differently. You've channeled your energy from being an abusive person in general to now being a person who religiously abuses people. But you're still an abusive person. Nothing has changed. You've just changed your energy, right? And so it's so crazy, but they're difficult to deal with. But it's it's a, it's a mental illness. You just have to accept that they are completely lost in their world of delusion, as a lot of people on the planet are in general, but they're just completely lost in their world of delusion. And you just teach your kids about it, because ultimately, over time, generations and generations, the kids are not accepting this Christian stuff. They're seeing the truth. They're seeing the inconsistencies. I exist as a channel to help people see the inconsistencies and to point them in whatever direction they want to go. If a person wants to go towards atheism, that's fine. If a person wants to go towards being a pagan, that's fine. If a person wants to go towards a different sect of Christianity, okay, well, before you do that, let's take a look at that kind of thing. But it genuinely doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that we're caring, kind, and loving toward humanity. And Christians hate that. They hate the idea of unity, because they want somebody to die. They want somebody to bleed. They need their sin is going to be squashed. And so if God doesn't punish sin, then why the fuck are we here? Yeah, exactly. Why do you need God to punish sin? Like, what inside you is so hateful and so mean that you need God to punish for sin? Why can't you just forgive stuff and let go of stuff, right? I do that all the time. I get cut off in traffic. I don't get mad and upset. I hardly even see it anymore. I just kind of go on with my day. It doesn't even register as an offense against me, when I'm going and somebody says something kind of mean to me, I don't even recognize it. Because to me, it's just water off of a duck's back, because I've done so much work on myself, and I've done so much work on kind of my spiritual self and my psyche, that I only have love for people. That's it. And when you get to that point, you don't need God to kill. You don't need God to give you vengeance. If you're a person who's sitting there saying, God is going to avenge me, you have you have a bunch of stuff that you need to deal with, right? The only reason why you want vengeance in the Christian sense is because if you weren't Christian, you'd be pissed off and you'd go say something. But because you're Christian, now you're just hailing your curses and praying that God does something about it, right? It's just, it's just seeing the love and unity and all. And that triggers so many Christians. And just like in this video, what we'll see is that they want to call you stupid, an idiot, a dumb. They have to accuse you. They hate the idea that God could go without punishing sin. I can go without punishing people who piss me off all the time. I don't even want God to punish half the people that, kind of do these things against me. I don't care. I don't even register it, because on the underside of that, I have nothing but love for them. And so it's kind of a crazy thing. Let me see. He might be done here.
That Christian belief, and it's detrimental to the world. It's detrimental to the world. More people have been killed in the name of Jesus Christ than in any other avatar that's ever lived. And that is not even debatable in the statistics of that. The next deadliest religion after Christianity is Islam, and Islam has 1/3 the body count. 1/3 the body count of Christianity.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
But every religion has zealots. Every religion has the person who says, this is the only way and we're right and you're wrong. And you're an idiot because you don't believe as I do. You want to get out of religion and just get over to dietary things. I've never had more people attack me, other than Christians, than vegetarians, when I told them that I like to eat meat. Oh my God. The vegetarians are the biggest zealots in the world. Many of them. I also know many beautiful vegetarians. My good friend Alex is a vegetarian. We love each other. We laugh. He sends me jokes. I send him jokes. It doesn't matter. And but they'll take these things and they'll create a narrow lane to live by, right? And then on top of that, they'll negate the parts of the Bible where he tells the disciples to prepare the lamb for the Passover, or he cooks the fish for his disciples, right? They'll negate those pieces and parts. They also negate the part in the book of Leviticus where it literally gives you a list of the animals to eat. but their narrow band of knowledge says everyone was a vegetarian back then, and it's not true. It's just not true. And when you look at it from that perspective, that anybody who puts them into a narrow band of knowledge and thinks everybody who doesn't think like they do is an idiot, they're the ones who are showing their lack of knowledge, because they're not actually reaching out and expanding their knowledge to find out a bigger, more beautiful experience in this world. So I wanted to make this video specifically because I know that this is a natural tactic that people use when someone is deconstructing their belief system. They will naturally say you're an idiot, or they'll naturally say you're going to end up in hell. The end times prophecy thing that I did the other day video, I can't tell you how many told me that I'm going to experience it firsthand. That's because they're living a negative life and I'm living a positive one. They can't stand me being positive. And that, my friends, is my thought on this process. You are very knowledgeable. You are very wise if you're deconstructing and finding what you truly believe. Remember, spirituality is a personal journey. It's not a dictated path by someone who's going to judge you. And that, my friend, is my thought on this. You guys have a great day, and I will talk to you soon.
Yeah, I love John. He whenever I was walking away from Christianity, I kind of came across a few of his videos and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, the only thing I would tell a Christian is, okay, tell me for 1,000% fact, why is it that you Christians can't even agree amongst yourselves? Y'all are so, gung-ho and crazy for Christianity, then why don't y'all agree on one thing? Just find one idea that everybody can get behind and preach this idea that Christianity is united in a one clear direction. But no, that's never going to happen, because they just have so much shit that they refuse to deal with, so much shit that they don't want to see. And it's okay, just deal with it then. I mean, the Bible actively says that if you have a child who does not listen to you, who you've told them to listen, they don't listen, you've told them to listen, they don't listen, and they are just continuously ignoring you and not obeying you, then you can take that child to the elders of the city and have that child taken out to the front and stoned to death and killed. And that's supported. And it's not supported, it's actually commanded by God in the Old Testament to put out evil amongst you. In the same way, God expects people to be hung in trees. And he doesn't expect the person to be hung in trees. He wants those people hung by the neck, by the throat, in these trees overnight, because he wants it to be a sign to anybody who tries to step out of line. This is your loving God. It's so, and so you have to just understand that, you're dealing with a really deep-seated mental illness that really dictates the way that they see the world, the way they interact with people, the way that they treat people, the way they date, the way everything. They're just incredibly mean, shrewd people sometimes. Some are incredibly beautiful, including the ones that were brought to me on my path whenever I had prayed, because I'd gotten a little bit too scared of the path that I was going on, because whenever I was leaving Christianity, I was in kind of flux. I would go, get scared, go, get scared, go, get scared. But in every situation, I was always supported to walk away from Christianity. And I don't have a doubt about that in my mind. But, let the people talk crap. They're going to, and just accept that it is a part. You can probably remember when you were a Christian how, you would judge the absolute shit out of somebody for their belief system. I know me, whenever I was a Christian, after I'd been a Christian for like 7 years, something like that, judging the ever-loving shit out of Muslims, out of Catholics, out of Pentecostals, out of Church of Christ, out of just everybody, because they're all going to hell, because we're the only ones who had read the Bible correctly, and we were the only ones who were going to heaven. And it's literally a mental illness, and it's hard to walk away from it, because it's not recognized as a mental illness and as a problem in society, and it's supported, right? The community support this. And so because of that, it's almost like leaving a cult. When you leave a cult, you have all the cult members are always reaching out to you, and they try to do things to hurt you. Maybe they try to do things to scare you back into the religion. Christianity does the exact same thing. I mean, Christians, they're the most entrapped people, and they're blind, completely blind to their entrapment. You know, there's a door open to the enclosure just feet away from them, but they're not going to look at the door that's open. They just want to stare through the bars and complain and be mad and all this kind of stuff. And it's, you know, and so if you are dealing with that, you know, always, like I said, you know, just have compassion over them. They're experiencing a lot. They're going through a lot. And to be frank, a lot of them are never going to change from that perspective. And so if you have family members, if you have a father figure or a mother figure or whatever, you have to be compassionate to understanding that they may just never change from that perspective, and that's okay. You know, as long as you're the one who's finding freedom within yourself and you're finding happiness and joy and kind of seeking out the fruits of the spirits, which is joy, what is it? Oh, peace, joy, long-suffering, I forget all of them. But as long as you're experiencing those positive attributes of life, then there's no reason to go back, and there's no reason to allow one of these, you know, kind of kookheads to scare you back into the religion. You know, just accept it as, you know, these are just, it's another hater on the planet, right? I mean, when you put yourself out on the internet, you get a lot of haters, and everybody, it's so funny. It's okay. It's kind of crazy to see. It's like, especially whenever you're just kind of a person who just does their own thing online, you'll always find somebody who will just absolutely shit on you and call you a stupid idiot. And you have to realize that that is a person who is living a very dark experience in their life. And you just shrug and say, damn, it sucks to be you, and you move on, you know. So, okay, guys, I'm going to go ahead and end the video there. Obviously, please like and subscribe or interact with this video in any way that you can. It really helps and support the channel. Also, Wednesday nights, 8 p.m. Central, you can find me here on YouTube Live. I'll have a phone number up where you can call in, and I can support you going through grief and all that kind of stuff. And then also down in the description box, you'll see the link to my website, and you can click on there. And in there, you'll have meditations, exercises, and all sorts of things that you can do that'll support your walk out of Christianity, but also help you with living a healthier life in general, emotionally, as well as a course that I have for kind of emotional regulations, where we go and try to get to the root causes of all of the feelings that tend to come up as you're leaving Christianity and just as you're walking through life in and of itself. So thank you guys so much for spending this time with me. I'm going to go ahead and click off, and we will see you in the next one. Cheers.